So welcome to Power Corridor, sir. It's nice to have you here. You are a veteran diplomat, so I think we are very privileged to have someone like you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you and through you with so many youngsters.
So to start with, I think we would like to exchange some opinion on this Operation Sindoor and how the events have unfolded after that. So I think by and large there is a consensus that India was able to teach a lesson to Pakistan on its own terms. And how do you view the post Sindoor operation scenario? Do you think Pakistan would have learned some lesson and there will be a lasting impact of this operation on tackling terrorism?
Thank you for the question. I am not sure whether this language of teaching a lesson by A to B and B is learning a lesson from A is the most appropriate for discussing or understanding what has happened. Let us look at the big picture. What happened in Pahalgam was atrocious. It was a terrorist act, no doubt about it. Question: was there any signaling from Pakistan before that? Yes, there was signaling because the Pakistan Army Chief, General Munir, well, sometime in March, he had held a commanders' conference, and there he said, A, India was behind what happened with the Jafar Express in Balochistan. We all remember how the train was hijacked and
Yes.
a certain number of people were killed
Yeah.
after asking whether they were Baluchis or Punjabis. Selective killing.
Yes.
Atrocious. But you have to understand that. So the second point he made was that Pakistan should send a quote strategic message to India, or sorry, strategic response, quote unquote, to India. Okay, what he asserts, not with any evidence, but he asserts was India's involvement. Now that was in March. A week before Pahalgam, roughly, he came out on X and said that we should not forget our courageous Kashmiri brethren fighting for their independence. Now, all this was naturally taken note of by the Indian intelligence. And then what happened? The Indian intelligence or security agencies focused on two other areas. Pahalgam, this particular place, Baisaran, can take only 1,200 or maximum 2,000 tourists. But these other two areas where there was some signaling of terrorist activity, they could take much bigger numbers, 10,000, 12,000. So our intelligence agencies naturally focused their attention on those two areas. Now, it is possible to guess that Pakistan did send signals to areas A and B to sort of distract our attention, and that then it struck at C. That is Pakistan. So that is point number one. Point number two is that, again, right or wrong, in General Munir's mind, India struck at Pakistan, okay, and now Pakistan has given it back to India. So in their mind, the origin starts with Balochistan. Okay. Now the question is, you said whether they have got the message. Now I'm not so sure. I'll tell you why. Well, we cannot read the Dawn news because it is sort of you can't get through to it. It is banned, so to say.
Yeah.
But snippets can, and there have been big rallies in Pakistan praising the army, and praising General Munir in particular. In other words, army, the military, which was not that popular there,
Yeah.
because Munir himself, he had messed up relations with Taliban.
Yeah.
Remember? Taliban, when it took over power in Afghanistan, the ISI was its sort of,
Yeah.
principal counselor.
Yeah.
And Taliban did everything according to advice. But
Yes.
later the relationship got soured.
Yes.
And in Pakistan, they hold, right or wrong, that Munir was responsible. Again, Munir was not able to take care of the insurgency in Balochistan and elsewhere. So
Yeah.
the military was not doing very well in terms of public support or opinion. But after this, the military seems to be, again, about Pakistan. One has to depend on Dawn News or New York Times or the Guardian, you know what I mean, or Le Monde or Reuters.
Yeah.
The Munir's popularity has soared.
Yeah.
And since the army's clout has grown, and since I maintain, I could be wrong, that army is responsible for terrorism coming to India from Pakistan.
Yeah.
Well, so I wouldn't say that they have learned a lesson.
Now that India has drawn a red line, I think the Prime Minister has said that every act of terror will be treated as a war. So, how do you deal with it now? Because every other day there could be a attack. I think even on May 22nd, a month after this Pahalgam terror attack, there was an attack and one person died in that. So that was also a terror attack. So I mean that way, if do you think India will be able to really act on what the Prime Minister has committed? That every act of terror will be an act of war, and Operation Sindoor has merely been paused, and we will hit back. So then, in that case, we are going to be a permanent state of war with Pakistan. Do you think that's feasible?
Well, let me put it this way. We cannot have a mathematical formula for foreign policy.
Yes.
You know, it is a little in the gray area, you know. Secondly, as you said, there was an attack around the 22nd of May,
Yeah.
but we do not know whether Pakistan had any role in the sense that maybe Pakistan had a role, but then we have to establish it. As I said, I maintain not with much electronic or other evidence because I'm not in the government. I don't get any access. But I maintain that the terrorists in Pakistan who want to attack India cannot do that without the approval, encouragement, and support from the Pakistan military.
Yeah.
That is my view. I could be wrong, but I think it is reasonably correct assessment. As regards the evidence, of course, it is for our intelligence agencies to, get the evidence and tell it to the whole world to the extent it is shareable. Not everything is shareable.
See, Pakistan kept on harping, Pakistan kept on insisting and demanding that there should be an independent probe into this entire Pahalgam terror attack. They were backed by China and Turkey and certain other countries. And India said there was no need for such a probe because it is established that Pakistan has been abetting terror across the border for all these years. So, how do you, I mean, reconcile the two points of view when India says that we don't need to improve anything? You have been abetting terror, and Pakistan says, we are victim of terrorism, and so there should be a probe and find out who is responsible for this. How do you reconcile, and how do you?
Well, let me put it this way. A UN led probe would have been appropriate as far as I can see it, in the sense that if it is UN led, it is true that Pakistan, assisted by China, would do its utmost to mislead the investigation team. But then, you see, one can figure out that one is being misled and take appropriate action. So a UN-led investigation would have been, to my mind, appropriate where India had a major part because India is the aggrieved party. So Indian agencies should be there. But whatever be the reasons, and also, Pakistanis are very clever. When they ask for independent probe, they can be 99.99% certain that India would oppose it. So
Yeah,
there is no risk.
look, I get your point. Now, Much has been talked about the intervention by President Donald Trump, and a lot of people have raised these questions. Okay, this is the interference in India's politics policy that we would not allow any third party interference in Indo-Pak affair. So when President Trump announces that he effectively ensured this ceasefire, how do you look at it? I mean, has India somewhere compromised its long-lasting position?
I think we have to unpack it. Let us look at the chronology to the extent we know. 3:35 p.m. Indian Standard Time, I believe 10th May.
Yeah,
Pakistan DGMO is able to speak to his Indian counterpart
correct.
and ask for a ceasefire.
Yes.
Now, our Foreign Secretary announces a ceasefire, correct me if I'm wrong, 5:30,
Yeah.
saying that it was effective from 5 o'clock. And a little before 5 o'clock, I believe President Trump, if I remember right, about 4:30
Yeah.
Indian Standard Time, announced it.
Yeah.
Now, 4:30 our time, let's assume that Trump was in Washington.
Yeah.
4:30 plus 2:30, that would have been 7 a.m.
Mm.
Trump is getting up.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. Now, two more points. One, what prevented India from announcing at 3:50? Pakistan has asked for a ceasefire.
Yeah.
We are considering it, and
Yeah.
there is no third party involvement.
Yes.
We could have made that announcement
Correct.
or something like that
Yeah.
before Trump,
Yeah.
because we all know that President Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah.
And he hasn't had much success, though he might still make it
Yeah.
regarding the Ukraine war.
Yeah.
It's a
Correct.
work under progress.
Yeah.
And he has been sort of ridiculed in the Western media also.
Yeah.
Oh, you said you will do it in 24 hours. Now,
Yeah.
what happened?
Nothing is happening. Yeah.
Okay. Now, and also he has a habit of taking credit
Yeah.
for anything that happened under the moon. That is his personality. We have to
Yeah.
live with it. I
Yeah.
mean, you have to understand the psychology. Now, my question is, what prevented us from giving some acknowledgement to Trump after we announced the ceasefire? Because we could have said 3:50, they asked for it. We have considered, and now we are agreeing, because we had no intention of wanting a big war with Pakistan. We have
Yeah.
sent the message. They have received it. That's why they're asking for the ceasefire. So that's it. And in this regard, we also want to say that a time when India's in air strikes, meaning missiles and drones, not the aeroplanes, fighter planes crossing the boundary, but India's air action had caused so much damage to Pakistan that at a time it did not know what to do, whether to
Yeah.
escalate, whether to de-escalate, or better still, just ask for ceasefire. Now, at that time, America correctly advised Pakistan to ask for a ceasefire, push Pakistan in the direction of ceasefire, and we are grateful to America for that. But we want to make sure there was no mediation because, well, let us use the English language correctly. There can be mediation between A and B by C only when C has been asked by both A and B.
Correct.
In this case, India did not ask. So
Yeah.
obviously there was no mediation.
Yeah.
And we could have handled it that way because, Trump has to be handled carefully.
Yeah. You're right. Absolutely right. So, do you think this will somehow create some bad blood between the two countries? I think diplomatically, do you think Indo-US relations will be adversely affected in the long run? Because several things, when you read the signals, then you find that a lot of places somehow we feel that Mr. Trump is trying to humiliate maybe a stronger word, but treat India unfairly. I think whether it is a question of sending our people in chains and fetters, or whether I mean taking steps which are detrimental to our interest in many other ways, whether it's a question of tariff or whether it's a question of visas policy, and whether whether in his utterances, the way the sort of language which he uses, and the way he did not invite Prime Minister to attend the swearing in, there has been a chronology of events which shows that Trump administration is not very fairly disposed of towards Indian government. How do you look at it?
Uh, First thing, we have to recognize that our view of Pakistan as a, what shall I say, a failing state, a state is in deep trouble, a state which is about to be dismantled. That view is not shared by the rest of the world. We may be
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
but it doesn't follow that the rest of the world agrees with us.
yeah,
From Trump's point of view, Pakistan is a major Islamic nation. Trump wants to derive the maximum advantage from the Gulf countries, the rich Islamic countries.
yeah,
Pakistan is the only Islamic nation with the nuclear weapons.
yeah,
So, in Trump's view, Pakistan has its own importance. That they might need money from the IMF, well, that is a different matter. In fact,
yeah,
India's claim that it would prevent the IMF from giving the loan, well, that was slightly far. We did not even oppose. We had to
yeah,
abstain because that is the IMF rule, you know. So we also have to understand how the rest of the world looks at Pakistan. We can do our best to change their view, but we have not yet succeeded. And as regards this long drawn out discussion about hyphenation, rehyphenation, I'm afraid again, this is not good, the best way of to analyze international politics, you see. And of course, there was a time, if you remember, uh, Lal Bahadur Shastri was invited to the United States. And then Pakistan made a hoo-ha. And, you know, finally, United States disinvited Lal Bahadur Shastri. But he still went to Canada, and on his way back, he met Ayub Khan. Anyway, so the point I'm saying is that there was a time when there was very rigid hyphenation. That is, if a Western leader is visiting India, has to go to Pakistan. That.
yeah,
So that is over. So occasionally, if they speak of Pakistan and India in the same sentence, in the same breath, I don't think we should get so much worked up about it.
yeah.
You know,
And how do you, I mean, look at this a strategy or policy of Indian government to send several delegations abroad to convey our point of views on this Operation Sindoor and how we have been impacted by terror import from Pakistan. Do you think it is going to serve any purpose? I think everybody in the world knows what is the situation. So this reassertion of our point of
well,
view.
let me put it this way. To what extent these delegations have been successful in projecting India's view is something which we can talk about only after they return. It's a work under progress.
Yeah,
But second point is that if per se, it is not a bad idea
yeah,
because when parliamentarians go, they get
yeah,
access to their counterparts.
yeah,
And of course, the ambassador has access to the media. But when there
yeah,
is a important delegation from the country
yeah,
which he represents, naturally he has one more occasion to uh, you know interface with the media. So
yeah,
their presence is good and their speaking is good, but
yeah,
to what extent it has been useful is something we can say only later. But in
Yes.
this in this connection, I want to bring to
Yeah.
the notice of our youngsters who are listening that I was first secretary in Vienna at the time of
Yeah.
the Bangladesh war.
Yeah.
Uh, Indira Gandhi came there on her way to
Yeah.
New York. No parliamentary delegation came there, and but I had gone to the University of Vienna and spoken to the students, and I didn't ask them to stage a dharna, but on their own, they went and staged a dharna in front of the railway station. Then
Yeah.
I got into trouble with my American colleague, the counselor political. He called me and said, Fabian, what have you done? I said, what have I done? Oh, my daughter, she is sitting there in front of the railway station. You have told her. So I had to tell him very calmly, listen, I don't know your daughter individually. I was at the university, I talked to the youngsters, but I never
Yeah.
asked them to go to the railway station. So what I'm trying to say, there was great support for India. And the last point, senators came to India.
Yeah.
We showed them where the refugees are. And then,
Yes.
there was so much, what shall I say, coverage of that in the Western media. In fact, what I would suggest is there should be opinion pieces from the Prime Minister in New York Times, Washington Post, Corriere della Sera,
Oh,
Der
absolutely right.
Spiegel, Le
Yeah.
Monde, and so on.
Yes. Very good idea, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. I think it was a pleasure, and I think your views will definitely enlighten a lot of our readers. Thanks a lot, and we will catch up again. Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir.